UARE app, the Total Wellbeing app, using movement, community mindset, and habits to live better, live longer. Has that all your training, what you've learned about training as an elite athlete, recovery, whether it be returning from an injury or recovering after a big grueling event, has that all fed into, I guess, the inspiration for you to start this app? And can you tell our listeners what it's all about, really?
Yeah, well, I guess the inspiration came from a couple of things. Firstly, with I use a Garmin when I go training, and when I finish training, I kind of have a look at the data, but there was so much data that was overwhelming for me. Um, Really, what I wanted to see out of that was pretty much a simple score out of 100 that's relative to to my age and gender, um, and relate it to somewhat the world's best pace, if that makes sense. Um, the second part of the inspiration behind that was myself and the two other co-founders, Grant Ellison and Mark Pasquez. We're all members of Manly Surf Club. And we'd go for a ski paddle on a Saturday morning during winter. And it was probably anywhere from 15 to 20K. And by the time we kind of left, went 10K down and then came back, I'd come in probably 10 minutes ahead of Grant and 5 minutes ahead of Mark. And we thought we'd go for a long paddle, we'd come back and, I'd say to Grant, who's 50, I'd say, mate, try and keep up next time. And he said, mate, try and be 50 and still be up where you're at. And then we started thinking about okay, if we were to do a race, how much of a head start would I need to give you to come in at the same time? And anyway, Grant's like, oh, you'd have to give me probably 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And I'm like, okay, imagine if we could go off go and then we go out, do the course and come back and we both get a score out of 100 relative to someone my age and relative to someone your age, who scores the highest out of 100. And then he thought, shit, let's try and create something that allows us to do that. And Mark being a paddler also, but understanding the tech stack better than we do, he thought, actually, we could probably do that. One of the paddlers that we train with, he's a data scientist, and he's like, hang on, I'll try and create an algorithm for that. So now we've got this score out of 100 that caters for running, swimming, and surf ski paddling. They were our first three sports that we wanted to try and crack. So, for example, I can go do the city to surf with my dad, and I could potentially beat my dad by half an hour, and I score an 80 out of 100, and he comes in half an hour later, but for a 62-year-old man, he's actually scored an 82, and he, in theory, beats me. So that's kind of the nuts of where we started. We want to tie that into some mentoring, whether it be nutritional help, training help, life outside, training and stuff like that. And I guess the premise is just to keep people active and keep them moving. And we track sentiment along the way as well. So how your training affects your mindset. So the app's going to be quite big. We've just finished our MVP product, where we've got just under 1,000 users on it. We've got a couple of, partnered with a few events like the Cold Classic and the Australian Ocean Racing Surf Ski Series, where, we kind of take all their event data, we scrub it against the algorithm, and we kind of republish results according to people's age, gender, and give them a score out of 100 to see how they're sitting in their age cohort.
It's such an interesting concept, mate. And it's great, the way you thought about it, because at the end of the day, it all is relative, isn't it? If you've got an 80-year-old man working, on a certain exercise, and they can't sustain the same, obviously, intensity as someone like you or an elite athlete, but in a relative sense, they may be working at a harder intensity for them. It's an awesome concept there that you're working on. It'll be great to see it once the final product's there and available for everyone. Can we find that on the App Store? Is that available now to download, or when can we?
You can get it through the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And it's UARE, so it's a capital UARE. UARE app.